Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to England once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good couple of times before. I think this must be review number 10 or 12 involving this brewery now on the channel. I've had some great beers from these guys over the years, and they're a highly respected English brewery actually. Mainly they made their name from the New England Hazy IPAs, but we're going to have a look at a slightly different sub-style from them today. And I always enjoy reviewing beers like this that are styles that breweries are not so well known for. But for this review then, we are going to go down to Cornwall in the southwest of England. This brewery were originally based in Falmouth, but they're now up in Penryn. And that of course means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Verdant Brewing Company. So this one is called the Welcome U-Turn. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a West Coast double IPA. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. As you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I'm a huge fan of an old school West Coast IPA. I love the big kind of caramelly maltiness and the big kind of hoppy bitterness that these beers have. Many of the newer interpretations of this style of course tend to be less bitter than the originals were, which is a little bit disappointing I find, but they're still quite solid beers, and they are still quite nice. But you know, for me who was drinking beers, these kind of beers back 2012, 2013, not having the same level of bitterness it just isn't quite the same, I have to say. But yeah, as I said, I always like trying different beer styles from different breweries. You know, the whole craft beer market has been so haze craze orientated recently. It's really nice to start seeing it, to see it starting to kind of re-diversify, if you like. We're seeing more lagers now, we're seeing more West Coast IPAs, black IPAs are also making a bit of a comeback as well. So long may that continue. I do enjoy the New England IPAs, but when it was only these kind of things that you could get, it was a wee bit boring, I have to say. But yeah, I also had a very nice Pilsner from Verdant Brewing Company recently. I'm not sure exactly what order I'll publish these videos in, so we'll just see, but you can look forward to that one. And if you do want to try a lager beer from Verdant, you certainly won't be disappointed with it. But yeah, definitely curious to see how this one turns out. Welcome U-Turn, 8% West Coast double IPA from Verdant Brewing in Penryn, down in Cornwall. I think this will be a pretty interesting review. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Verdant Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt return to these guys in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to very regularly at the moment because I am enjoying a little bit of an extended period at home in the motherland of Scotland, and we've got the English beers right on our doorstep, which is never a bad thing. There's a really thriving beer scene down there these days. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Verdant Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So Verdant Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are originally from Falmouth in Cornwall in the southwest of England, and they were founded back in 2014 by Adam Robertson and James Heffron, and joined in the very early stages by Rich White. So Adam was a designer by trade, and James had been a homebrewer for a number of years, while Rich was an electrician who actually helped build the brewery and then joined them quite soon after as a partner. So they ordered their brewing equipment in 2014, and they started brewing their beers early on the following year. But initially they struggled to get their beers recognised in Cornwall because of the traditional beer culture in that part of England. But they were proven to be a big hit across the rest of the country, in places like Manchester and Newcastle and London and all of these places. But yeah, getting their beers recognised at home was a little bit tricky initially, but the locals really have taken to them over the last little while from what I gather. But originally these guys were based in the Tregonigi Industrial Estate in the west of Falmouth, but this brewery was scaled up gradually to have a 16 hectolitre system and a weekly brew capacity of around 8,000 litres. But later they opened up a restaurant and bar on Quay Street in 2018 after they did a crowdfunding campaign, and very recently they've just opened up a new brewery in Penryn, which is fitted with a 35 hectolitre brewing system, which is pretty impressive. So 3,500 litres per brew for these guys these days, and I'm sure the fermentation capacity of that brewery will be gradually scaled up over the next little while. But yeah, as of January 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 60 different kinds of beer, and hopefully that will continue to rise over the next little while. It would be nice to see them do more West Coast IPAs. I'm not sure if this is the first one that they've done, but it's certainly the first one that I've seen from them. But then again, I'm not in Scotland all that much these days. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Verdant Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is your history section of this video then. Let's get on and actually do the beer itself and have a taste of it. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open up. As you can see, this artwork is a little bit different compared to what we've had from Verdant Brewing Company before. You can see that this beer is a little bit of a collaboration with Simply Hops, who are based in England from what I understand, and also WHC Labs, who do a lot of things with yeast and stuff like this. But yeah, this I think should be very, very interesting. It's got a very impressive hop bill on it. So in the early edition, in the early addition, I should say, not early edition, in the early edition side of things during the boil, they have added flex hop extract, which I looked up before the video. That is something that just gives you pure bitterness to the beer from what I understand. There's Amarillo, Centennial, Chinook, Columbus and Simcoe added in the early edition hops. Then after the boil is stopped, there's Amarillo, Cascade, Centennial, Chinook and Columbus in this one. So yeah, that should be quite interesting. I wonder why they don't add Simcoe in the later part of the beer. Actually, that's kind of that's quite interesting. But yeah, very impressive hop bill on this one then. So Simcoe, as we know, lovely big kind of passion fruity quality. It'll turn out to be really quite oily and a more caramelly orientated malt base like a West Coaster. Amarillo, we know, big oily orangey qualities. Both Amarillo and Simcoe sit around the kind of 11-12% alpha acid mark. Cascade is the original Yakima Valley hop, 8%, you know, a little bit of a kind of almost figgy red fruity sort of thing, and some grapefruit to it. Centennial, lovely big kind of lemony zesty characters. I think that one is around about 11-12% alpha acid as well. Chinook, we know, is about 13-14 if I remember rightly. That gives you these big pine resiny notes, lots of dark grapefruit. And then Columbus is one of your typical bittering hops. Very, very kind of spicy. What I remember, quite a kind of peppery spice that you get off of that. Actually, it's interesting that they're using that in the cold part of the beer, actually, because usually that would be a bittering hop. So yeah, this one I think should be really interesting. But yeah, 440ml can. This one, I think, again, I paid about £6 for this can. So in Swedish kroner, that will be, you know, about 65 Swedish kroners these days, maybe a little bit more. So yeah, about €6.50, maybe about $7, $7.50 American, just to give you a rough idea of the price. But yeah, 440ml can this one, West Coast double IPA with a very, very impressive hop bill on it from one of the most respected IPA breweries down in England. You can't kind of really go wrong with this one. I also see that it's got the Swedish pant thing on it, so I'm wondering who in Sweden is importing this beer, or is this just them kind of preparing for it? Because some of these English beers have the Norwegian and the Swedish pant thing on them as well, actually. Usually the Danes put a sticker on it, of course. But yeah, interesting stuff. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. 8% West Coast double IPA. I hope this one turns out to be as good as some of the other IPAs that I've had from Verdant Brewing in the past. The last beer that I reviewed from these guys was, what was it called? Random Rules. And then after that, of course, I did the Pilsner, which was very nice. But the Random Rules IPA was a really solid New England one. And I got that just because I wanted something from Verdant and I liked the name of the beer. I thought it was going to be like a, you know, poking fun at the British government for, you know, their handling of the whole COVID-19 pandemic being subpar. But it actually turned out that it was a tribute to to a musician, which was kind of interesting. So yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a guy, I forget what his name was it David Berman or something, but it was the Silver Jews, I think was the name of the band, and Random Rules was one of the songs. So yeah, pretty interesting. But yeah, as you can see with this one, and now that we've got the whole thing in the glass, you can see it looks rather nice actually. It's got that whole kind of natural haze thing going on that you would expect of a West Coast IPA. I would describe this one as being a very, very light amber colour, but leaning more towards the yellow side of things. But you can see the beer is poured with a solid finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That's not a creamy head in the slightest, that is perfect white. It's a little bit more bumpy further up, but yeah, and very foamy kind of underneath. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there, but I mean overall it does look very nice, and there's a lovely kind of natural haze to this one. So if I stick my fingers behind the glass, you can see it does go together very nicely. There are actually, I've maybe got the fridge just a little bit cold, but there are a few little bits of sediment just kind of floating around in this one. These very, very small pieces of particulate matter, a little bit like a suspension, almost actually, using my chemistry knowledge as always. But yeah, certainly looks the part for a West Coast IPA, this one, and I'm just hoping that this one lives up to the other Verdant beers that I've had before. But knowing this brewery, it probably will. So yeah, certainly nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. Let's take a closer look at that aroma then and just see how we get on. That is quite nice. Now, one thing I'll say about West Coast IPAs, for me, for a long time, the stereotypical or the archetypical West Coast IPA was Sierra Nevada Torpedo for me. And that's a really big malty, caramelly leaning one. But the thing that I learned after getting to try Pliny the Elder was that this style can also be really quite bready actually. It can be very smooth and very bready. So for me, that's the two directions you can take a West Coast IPA. And this one, to me, seems as if it's going to be a little bit more like that kind of bready end of the spectrum, like Pliny the Elder. And I like both. I do like the more caramelly malty ones, and I like the more kind of light bready ones like this. And the thing is, with the hops that are in this, it makes me wonder, is this meant to be like almost like a clone or a tribute or something? Because the hops in this beer, they are very, very similar to what I'm sure were in Pliny the Elder. These are all old school kind of hops that would have been very, very popular in the time, 2012, 2013, when the West Coast IPAs were kind of all the rage, although they were all the rage before that. That was, they were all the rage before I got into drinking the craft beers. But yeah, this one, I have a feeling, might well be a tribute to Pliny the Elder or something like that, because the hop bill looks oddly familiar. But yeah, if anyone's from the breweries watching, correct me on that if I'm wrong. I'd be very curious to know. But when you put your nose into this beer, the thing you're going to get right away, you get a lovely soft kind of white bready character coming out of the beer. Very, very soft, fluffy, white bready character. There's a little bit of a bread crusty note to it. You can smell, I think there is a little touch of wheat in this one. Does it have wheat in it? It does, and it's also got oats in it, which is quite interesting. I don't think the West Coast IPA, actually had oats in them, so that's an interesting thing. I know that some of them had a little bit of wheat in them, but I don't think oats was a common thing to use in the New England IPAs. These, of course, are, by and large, mostly, they are mainly barley malt orientated. It's just a little bit of wheat and things that they put in these. But yeah, certainly with this beer, if you take the aroma in quite deeply, you do get a little bit of the wheaty bitiness on the back of the nose. You can perhaps just smell a little bit of the oaty sweetness in there as well, but these are very, very minimal components compared to everything else. So yeah, like I said, mainly it's a soft white bready character you're getting out of this one. There's a nice little bit of a kind of bread crusty note in there as well. For me, there's a good little bit of a sweet. There is a good little bit of a really quite bright and very sweet caramel. Not boozy at all, just really nice and bright. There's a lot of McVitie's digestive biscuit in there for me as well, but it's not quite a grainy biscuit. It's very bright. It's not honey-like, and it's not maple syrup-like, but it's kind of like a combination of all three. It's got, the brightness of the McVitie's digestive biscuit, but it's got the more oily character of, like, maple syrup or something like that. So this is a very, very quirky beer in a lot of ways, I would say. So yeah, the malty side of this one, I think, is spot on, and it really does remind me of Pliny the Elder in a lot of ways. It's one of these very kind of bready barley malt. Well, I suppose all of them are barley malt, like I said, but it's a really bready leaning West Coast double IPA for me, this one. And there's just something oddly familiar about this beer, and that's what's making me think it's a clone, including having seen the hops in this one. But yeah, the sweetness, the more and more you smell this beer, you start to get more of that kind of brown sugary sweetness out of it. It's a little bit like kind of Werther's Originals and stuff. So yeah, lovely, lovely smelling beer. But when you take the aroma in quite deeply, as I say, a bit of wheaty bitiness out of it, a little bit of the booziness comes out as well. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, again, it's very nicely done. There's a little touch of earthiness in this one, which you're always going to get, particularly from Columbus. Columbus will give you a little bit of that, but you've got some nice big floral aromatic and piney resinous notes in there. The floral notes will be coming from the Columbus. The piney resins will be coming from the Chinook in this one. But what I will say is that this beer doesn't smell overly dank. It doesn't smell overly like dank and bitter. So I'm curious to see whether this is going to be a more modern take on the West Coast Double IPA with the lower bitterness? I'm hoping not. I'm guessing with the number of hops in the early edition, or what it says is to the hot side of the boil. I'm hoping that it's not. I do hope this one has a good bit of a bitter kick to it actually. But yeah, lovely kind of lighter grassy component in there as well. Then you've got a big oily fruity component to this one. So I mean, you get that big kind of, you don't get so much grapefruit in this one. For me, the fruits, the tropical side of things is a little bit more soft. You definitely get some of that passion fruit from the Simcoe. It's oily, but it's still quite soft. Lovely big kind of juicy mango in there. You will pick up little complexities from the Citra like apricot and papayas and stuff like this. Maybe even I wouldn't go as far as pineapple or guava or anything like that. But yeah, the beer, it's got a lovely big oily orange character from the Amarillo. You smell that big juicy oily quality in there. The Cascade, I think, has given it just a wee bit of depth as well. You get that almost kind of figgy juicy sort of thing in there. So there's a wee bit of an almost lychee gooseberry sort of thing going on, and that's some of the complexities that you can get from Citra. Actually, you really get all the Citra's really showing everything that it can contribute in this beer for me. The Citra, I think, is the one that's holding everything else together. That's why it's such a great hop to have in single hop IPAs. That's why it works so well, because it's got such a level of depth and complexity to it that it can blow you away. But yeah, on the kind of very tip of the nose, that's where you're getting the kind of lemony zesty sort of thing. It mixes in well with the kind of grassy side of the beer. But yeah, Centennial is a big kind of lemony zesty sort of thing. So this beer really just does come across as lovely and old school. Big oily orangey notes, kind of lemony citrus, and then the softer kind of oily tropical notes in there as well. But yeah, beautiful smelling beer, this one. I really like how all the aroma in this goes together. So definitely take a little bit of time to just enjoy this before you get stuck in. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. This one is the Welcome U-Turn West Coast Double IPA, 8% ABV, from Verdant Brewing Company, formerly in Falmouth but now in Penryn, both in Cornwall. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's very, very nice, I have to say. It has got a nice little bit of bitterness to it. I don't find it quite as bitter as some of the old school ones, but it does have a good little bit of bitter kick to it. And that is just the thing. I mean, you know, the sort of newer drinkers of craft beer are not used to the big bitterness levels that these old school West Coasters would have had. But this beer certainly does have a little bit of dankness to it, which is nice. I wonder if it's that flex hop extract that's given it that, and that's the first time I've seen that, I have to say. But this is a lovely West Coast Double IPA. It certainly lives up to the standard that Verdant have when it comes to IPAs, generally speaking. I would love to see a black IPA from these guys, absolutely. Yeah. Just solid beer. Absolutely. It's got everything you'd want. It's got a little bit of that kind of boozy kick, big bruisey brown sugary notes that you want from the West Coast IPA. It's got the big kind of floral spiciness and the kind of piney dankness in there, then the big oily fruits. It's really nicely executed, and it is, you know, it is somewhat similar to Pliny the Elder, but I do find it a little bit kind of more dark and dank, if that makes sense. So yeah, I like how this one, I do like how this goes together. Big thumbs up to Verdant for this. But yeah, let's try and break down the flavour profile of this beer then. So straight away, in the middle of your palate then, you get a lovely soft kind of, but still quite smooth and quite, you know, dense white bready quality in there. That forms the backbone of this beer in the middle third of your palate. As you go back towards the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a wee bit more of a kind of graininess in there. There's a little bit of bitterness to the beer, but then as you go into that back third of your palate, there is a sort of big wheaty smoothness in there, and it feels quite dense. So you can feel that just, you know, you can feel that sort of just kind of sitting there on the back end of the, you can feel that just on the back end of the beer there as well. So you've got a nice kind of smooth, bready backbone to this beer, and I really like that about it, to be honest with you. You do get a little bit of wheaty bitiness at the very, very back of the palate, which is quite a common thing, to be honest. But yeah, the bready backbone of this beer works very, very well for it, absolutely. But like I say, there's just something very, very familiar about this beer, I have to say. yeah, in a way it actually does remind me of the Kingslayer that I had recently from Buxton Brewery. It does remind me a little bit of that, but I actually thought that beer was a little bit more West Coasty just because of how soft and sweet it was. But yeah, this one's definitely got the kind of boozy kick that you would expect from a West Coast double, definitely. But yeah, if we start at the back of the palate, then you move kind of further forward, you've got the wheaty bitiness there, it smoothens out as you come further forward, it gets a little bit kind of grainy and dry on that border region, the thickness drops away, then in the middle part of the palate, like I said, you've got that softer kind of white bready note in there. In the centre of your tongue, you've got a nice big kind of oily, boozy caramel note out there. It's both a mixture of the malt, I would say. There probably is a little bit of caramel or, you know, Cara Munich or even Cara Pils or something like that in this beer. There's probably something like that in it, and that will be contributing, but a bit of the caramel and brown sugary flavour in this will be coming from that sort of sweet, from the alcohol in this beer. It's really going to give you that. But yeah, big dense kind of caramelly notes in there. It's quite a kind of dark, almost, I hesitate to say treacle molasses, but it's quite a you know, a big oily sort of thing that you get out of this beer. So yeah, but as I say, when you move further out from this one, you get a little bit more of a kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive sort of thing, but a lot of that brown sugar is to the alcohol in this one. There's one or two little grainy undertones to the beer, maybe a tiny little hint of a very slightly woody character to it, but yeah, the malt base has everything that you would want from a West Coast double IPA. It really does remind me a little bit, it's really bready orientated, this one. It's really on that bready end of the West Coast IPA spectrum, like Pliny the Elder is. But yeah, solid stuff on the malt base. That's one of the key things to get right for me with these West Coast IPAs, and Verdant have done it very well, but I didn't expect any less from them. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things, then, in the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. I think that's mainly the Columbus that's going to give you that, but very quickly that turns into being quite a dank, resinous and big floral spicy sort of thing. So that'll be the Chinook will be sitting underneath that. I guess the Flex hop extract, I'm not sure if that's going to contribute to both or one of them, but that, pardon me, will be playing a role in this one. So nice, deep, dank, piney notes in there, good bit of spicy floral aromaticity, and it does get the spiciness kind of peaks on that front, kind of those two front corners of your palate there. That's the Columbus that's doing that, and then the Chinook just kind of sits underneath and gives the beer a little bit more of that depth. But yeah, round the very front curve of the palate, the beer does have a little bit of grassy zestiness to it. There's almost just a little bit of a peppery kind of thing going on, which is interesting. But yeah, that kind of covers the green side of the beer for me. So properly old school. As I say, it will come to the mouthfeel in a minute, but it's not as bitter quite as some of the ones that I've had. It has been taken down a little bit, I think. I think it might be, you know, 90, maybe 80, 90 IBUs this beer. But remember, this is the weakest part of my beer reviewing thing when it comes to detecting the IBUs. But yeah, the quality of this one is very, very nice. But yeah, the grassiness, it does lighten up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste, but wee bit of citrusy zest and wee bit just of a kind of peppery spice to it, in fairness. But yeah, on that front third of your palate, those big, oily, juicy, fruity characters are very, very nice. So yeah, let's break down that fruity component of the beer then. So if you reach that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, there is again a little bit of graininess there, but at the very back you've got a nice dark floral, you've got a nice kind of dark grapefruity character from this one. That's the Chinook. I guess the Cascade is going to contribute to that as well, but it's a really dark, big citrusy quality there. As you move further forward from that, you start to get a softer passion fruit from the Simcoe. And then again, as you move kind of further forward from that, you might get one or two, you might get a little bit more of a kind of mangoey sort of thing in there. And maybe one or two underneath, like quite, you know, far down, and it's quite hard to detect. You might get a few softer kind of tropical notes in there as well. But as you reach that front half of that front third of your tongue, that's where you get the big oily Amarillo just laying its, you know, just planting its flag in there. That big oily orange Amarillo quality just lingers there, but as you reach the front edge of the tongue, that's Centennial. That's your big kind of lemony zesty sort of thing from the Centennial. Mixing in with those kind of more citrusy notes on the front half of that front third of your tongue, the front sixth of your tongue, I guess we should say. But you can feel the Cascade coming out of this one. Cascade, as I've told you before, I always think that Cascade gives you almost just a little bit of a mix of a strawberry and kind of slightly figgy sort of thing, and there is just a wee bit of that. You will notice underneath all those fruits. It does have a little bit of a kind of pale malty thing underneath the fruits, generally speaking, incidentally, but you do get just a little bit of this kind of figgy, strawberry-ish type thing coming out of this beer the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, the big dankness and stuff just lingers there. But it really is just a classic, old school West Coast IPA, this one, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. So well done the Verdant Brewing Company from this one. I think they've done themselves proud with this, and it's very solid and very, very authentic. That's what we want. That is exactly what we want. And I would be very curious to know if this was intended to be like a tribute or a clone of, you know, Pliny the Elder or something like that. Pliny the Elder is 8%, and the hops in that are pretty much the same, I think. And then the malty base is very familiar as well. So yeah, they used, like, you know, US Turo and Crystal and stuff like that. So maybe they've used slightly different malts in it. English malts, you know, like a little bit of Maris Otter, and probably, I think Crystal is quite common over here, something like that. But yeah, the malt base is maybe a bit different, but everything else I think is quite similar to it, to be honest. But yeah, beautifully done beer. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I think we've covered the flavour profile quite well in this one. So yeah, I would describe this beer as being kind of at the bottom end of full bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It's got a lovely big oily mouthfeel, which is exactly what you want from a West Coast IPA, especially a big double one like this. In terms of the IBUs, the more that I drink of this, I thought it was maybe about 80 or so IBUs earlier on, but the more that I drink of this, it might well be at the 100, it might well be at the saturation point, because it does build. The more and more you drink of this beer, the more the bitterness builds in it. But when you've got Columbus and Chinook in the beer, as well as this flex hop extract, I'm not surprised about that. This beer does have a little bit of a bitter kick to it. So yeah, good level of bitterness out of this one. The malt base has a good bit of smoothness underneath, but it also builds in sweetness a little bit later on. The sweetness covers up a little bit of the boozy qualities, then it's got a big, oily, lovely, fruity character to it. So yeah, big thumbs up to Verdant for this. Welcome U-turn. I've had some really, really good beers from these guys over the years, but this one probably is one of the reviews that I've enjoyed doing the most, and it is just because I enjoy this style of beer, and it's a style that Verdant are not so well known for. But as I said earlier, glad to see that the West Coast IPAs are making a bit of a comeback and being appreciated a little bit more, having everyone had just forgotten about them almost, and we're doing the hazy IPAs. So hopefully this continues. It is nice to have a choice of things to go through, of course. But yeah, big thumbs up to Verdant for this one. I've certainly enjoyed reviewing this beer, so I think we can round off the review there. It's got everything you'd want of a West Coast IPA, especially a big West Coast double. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Verdant Brewing Company. We might well get one more beer from these guys reviewed during my time home, so there'll be 4 Verdant beers reviewed over this particular cycle of Scottish and English beer reviews. But yeah, I'm not sure what order they'll publish in, but there will be 4 during this particular cycle. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Verdant Brewing Company, and I will catch you guys very soon. The Welcome U-turn West Coast Double IPA, 8% ABV. If you like Pliny the Elder, you will enjoy this one. This comes to you from Verdant Brewing Company, formerly in Falmouth in Cornwall, now just a little bit up the road in Penryn. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and thanks for watching.